You know, my advice is find somehow that you have the talent to do this and then just work at it. It's hard. Stay focused, meet people, be nice to people.
Carl, this is great having you here, man. We just did a panel together here in Illinois. And what's amazing about it is you are playing at the top of your game. And I remember as a young kid from Long Island listening to the Buckinghams and being influenced by the music and hearing you on the radio and just being so excited about this band that was put together that was making a difference in the American music scene. Thank you so much for being here for the Sessions interviews.
Well, Dom, thank you. Thank you for having me here. It was a real pleasure to be part of that Sessions panel.
Great fun,
to be
right?
a part of it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I learned a lot from it.
Well, I want to ask you, where did music begin for you? What first sparked you into wanting to play music?
Well, you know, I mean, if we go all the way back, I was a 13-year-old kid that my parents got me a guitar and guitar lessons. I grew up in kind of a rough neighborhood, and I think they wanted a diversion. They wanted me to just find something else and stay out of trouble, you know. But they didn't realize I was going to embrace this instrument so much and started taking some guitar lessons. But those were like 13, 14 years old, 15. I was, whenever I could, I'd get a record, a hold of like a lot of the great blues artists from Chicago, you know, like, you know, Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf.
Yeah.
I learned so much from, remember the Paul Butterfield band and Mike Bloomfield. I was copying his guitar licks and like, you know, and so I was like just playing this blues guitar and then incorporating, and then, you know, when I finally started a band and was able to, even though we were a pop group, I was able to incorporate some of those licks into those songs, you know. But our beginnings were in Chicago. You know, I started in the Chicago area, and it was a great time to play music because there were so many venues to cut your teeth on, to play at. There were these dances and, you know, teen hops, teen clubs. And, you know, so I had a little band together and we started playing those places, you know. And everybody knew it. There was a real feeling of music community in Chicago. Everybody knew each other, you know. And eventually I joined another band of guys that they were called the Pulsations, great name. And, you know, I joined up with those guys and we started playing. And there was a very famous venue in Chicago. We were like the house band every Friday night, the Holiday Ballroom. And the guy who owned the ballroom, Dan Belloc, who eventually produced us, our record, our first record's Kind of a Drag.
Yeah.
But he says, you know, I knew there was something special about you guys because everybody used to dance, but whenever you guys played there, they would stop and watch instead of dancing, you know. So he says, there's something there, you know. So that was our beginnings. So we cut our teeth playing, and in the Midwest, and you know, I was the youngest guy in the band. These guys would pick me up from school, and we would drive. We'd all pile in a van and drive as far as Aberdeen, South Dakota, and play a gig, you know, the weekend and drive back, and I'd make it just in time for school, and it was a mess. Our first break was a TV show on WGN television, you know, in Chicago, and it was a syndicated station, so a lot of their programming played all over the country, and we auditioned for a show called All Time Hits, and it was a variety show. We were like the token rock band, you know. They wanted us to do a couple, whatever was at the top of the charts that week, you know, and we would learn those songs and do them on the show. But they didn't like our name, the Pulsations. They liked the band. Actually, I think they liked us. The producer years later said that, how did you pick the Buckinghams? He says, well, they were the least worst band. So, you know, we were young kids, you know. But they changed it. They wanted to capitalize on the British invasion. Somebody from the show, who we became friends with, said, how about the Buckinghams with all the British thing going on and the British invasion? It sounds good. And we thought, well, why not? So we started doing, you know, the show as the Buckinghams. We were wearing gold lame suits at the time, and my hair was piled on top of my head. It was, you know, I'm 6'1", but I was about 6'6" with my hairstyle. I think my hair was as high as Christine's. But, you know, as the
Christine
show...
Ullman, they were talking about, who was the Beehive
Christine
Queen,
Ullman.
who's got a real high...
Yeah. She was on the panel today.
Yes.
You know, that great, the hairdo. I would have fit in her group, the way we would have fit in with her, the way we looked. But as the show progressed, we morphed into more Beatle-y looking. The hair came down, the suits were different, and 13 weeks of that, and it kind of changed us. So that was our first real exposure, being on that TV show.
So let's go back a little bit. So who were you listening to at the time when the band had started? What kind of music were you listening to?
Well, we were listening to a lot of R&B artists. We were listening to James Brown and Wilson Pickett. But we were listening to the British groups too, because the Buckinghams started in '65, and we loved, of course, the Beatles. We all wanted to be the fifth Beatle. The Hollies and the Yardbirds, and groups like that.
Absolutely.
And in the early days, I was listening to, when I was a 13-year-old going to dances, it was more like Roy Orbison songs, the Everly Brothers. The Everly Brothers were one of my favorites.
Yeah.
So, we were very eclectic. We were a cover band. That's all we were, really, at that point. So then when we left that TV show, that was September of '65, that landed us a recording contract with a record company, a Chicago-based label called USA Records. They brought us into the studio at Chess Studios on South Michigan Avenue, and here's this great blues studio that we hardly knew anything about. We're 17, 18-year-old kids. I don't think about that. Chuck Berry recorded there, and Muddy Waters, and all these guys.
Real history.
The Stones did their first album there.
Wow, yeah.
So here we are with this engineer, Ron Malo, who did all these great blues artists, So our first album, the Kind of a Drag album, it was all cover songs. I mean, we were just doing the songs we did on stage. And as you know, the Buckinghams started the pop rock horn sound. And that was only because our producer also had a big band. So he says, we should dress these songs up. We could put horns on them and it'd sound so much better. And we were like, oh, okay. So he got his trombone player to write charts for the songs. And being a trombone player, of course, the charts were heavy on the trombone side. I'll get into that, but that's how the group Chicago got
Chicago
its
and Blood, Sweat, and Tears all came after that. Yeah, interesting, very interesting.
Al Cooper said he started Blood, Sweat, and Tears because he heard our first Columbia album, Time and Charges, and that inspired him to put this horn group together. We were just doing cover songs, and we were looking for an original song. And our manager at the time, Carl Bonifetti, Chicago guy, he used to spin records at dances and stuff, and he was looking for a song, and he found the songwriter, Jim Holvey, who was writing. He was playing in a group called The Mob, a big group, show band, But he was writing songs, and we weren't songwriters at the time. So Bonifetti went over to his house with a reel-to-reel tape player and a microphone and put the mic on his guitar as he strummed on a guitar wasn't even plugged in, an electric guitar, singing Kind of a Drag, But when he brought it back to us, we said, there's something about this song that's really special. And so we worked it up. We went into my parents', we used to rehearse in different parents' basements at the time, and we'd last long enough till they got sick of us and threw us out, and we'd go to the next guy's house, But anyway, so we worked up the song, went in the studio, recorded it, and at first USA didn't think it was really a hit, and it sat in a can for about 3 months, I think, before they finally released it. And it took off like crazy. Yeah. It hit the charts, the Billboard, like at, I think, 60, and by the next week it was 30, and it was #1 by February of '67.
And how old are you at that time when that came out?
18, going to be 19.
And how are you dealing with that kind of success, where you're hearing a song that you played on the radio? How are you handling that?
Well, it was a little scary, because we went from a local band, all the venues we were playing, and we'd play outside in the tri-state area a little bit, but then all of a sudden to be thrown on a national stage was a little scary. But what made it easier, and we talked about this in the session, being a part of a band, it's a democracy. You're all equal. This was a band that we were all equal partners. And I think that made it easier to have other guys to lean on, to travel around with. it helped the whole situation, you know. So.
And how is the business part of what's happening? You know, now you're putting together this band, you're a family, you're a team, you're your business partners. How'd you put the business part of it together?
We didn't think a lot. That was our problem. We're a stereotype cases of bands back in the 60s where, you know, we just wanted to make music, play, meet girls, you know, have a good time. You know, we didn't think about the business side of it. We didn't realize when we had the leverage, here's the #1 record, we could have demanded some of the writing on those songs, the publishing, but we didn't know. And our parents weren't in the music business, and
they didn't know.
we didn't have lawyers looking out for us. Yeah. So the record deal we had with USA, we didn't make a lot of money off Kind of a Drag. You know, it helped with the live performances. We were in demand. We got offers for dates, but you know, we found ourselves. Kind of a Drag's the #1 record in the country. We didn't have a record deal anymore. Our contract ran out. So here we are, the #1 record in the country, no record deal. We fired our manager. And we did this collectively. We all agreed on all this stuff too. Once again, the band. So, you know, we didn't have a booking agent, you know, but we could have chose any label we wanted. Can you imagine having the #1 record in the country and being free from any...
Absolutely.
You know,
what amazing leverage you had at that time, yeah.
So we found James William Guercio. He became our manager and producer. And at the time, he was a bass player too, and he was playing with Chad and Jeremy, if you remember those guys.
Sure.
And he was really a Chicago guy, but he went out to LA and made his bones out there. So he came in looking like a real, you know, slick LA guy and talked us into signing with him. He brought us to Columbia Records, you know, and we signed with Columbia. And at the time, we didn't realize how good a musician and producer he was, because Guercio went on to produce not only our remaining hit, you know, top 10 hits, you know, Don't You Care, Hey Baby, Susan, Mercy, 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 and a couple albums we did with him. He went on to produce and manage the group Chicago, you know, who we introduced him to, you know, because they were good friends of ours. He came into Chicago.
Fantastic.
I'm not saying we were the only ones that recommended, but we kept telling him, you got to come in and hear these guys. They're really great, you know. But that's when things started really rolling along, was when we signed with Columbia, because now, you know, and then he brought us to the William Morris Agency. Then we started, gosh, we played 300 dates that year, 67, doing TV shows, you know, that's what we had. We didn't have social media, so you had variety shows. You'd record a new song, and, you know, hopefully, you know, you'd get a shot at one of these TV shows. You know, it's like of course, we did American Bandstand and the Jerry Lewis Show, the Joey Bishop, and of course the really big show, the Ed Sullivan Show, came up, and the Smothers Brothers show. I always joke, we joke about this on stage. We came into LA to do the show, and we got to the sound stage at CBS and walked out to do a run through, and they had the whole stage decorated with British flags and the Union Jack, and they thought the Buckinghams were a British group. They didn't know we were a bunch of Chicago guys. You know, you got the name happening, and the look we presented at the time. We were very Carnaby Street, you know, at the time. So,
but what a great way to brand yourself at that time, which was really what the entire British invasion was. You know, there were many bands that you're mentioning right now that the whole object of is for the listeners that are hearing this interview, go and do the research. And here's some of the names that are spoken about. Go there and do the research on who some of these people were, and find out the value of what was happening at that time. It was really magic.
Well, you know, like you talk about branding yourselves and coming up with an image. I don't know, we didn't think about it a real lot. It just kind of happened, you know, and we were very aware of what was in and what was going on, and you had 5 guys that were moving in the same direction as far as the look goes. You know, we had the haircuts and the suits, and you know, and there was a famous store in Chicago called the Man at Ease, and he brought in all the latest stuff from England, from London, you know, and he would let us come in and shop before he opened the store. So we'd pick out all the things we wanted first, you know, and that helped a lot with our look, you know.
That's very, very exciting. Well, I know the Buckinghams are still out touring, you're still working and doing it, which is amazing. How do you maintain the motivation and the energy to maintain this at the pace that you're still doing it at?
I count my blessings every day that my health has been real good, you know, and that means so much, you know, of course. And the voice is still working, and you know, and all that. I love doing it so much. I think I mentioned this on the sessions panel. I pinch myself all the time that, hey, they're paying me to do this. You know, I still feel that way. You know, it's just such a great feeling to get the reaction we get from an audience, that feedback. A lot of times people say, how can you play kind of a drag over and over? I mean, you've played it thousands of times. It's the audience, because of their reaction, that allows you to makes you want to do it. You know, you talk to them, and we joke a bit if they laugh about something. You know, all those things are. You know, I'm still excited when I hear our songs on the radio. It's still, you know, so it's what I do. I mean, it's just been doing it over 50 years, and it's still such a great feeling, you know, to be out there and meeting people.
Yeah, for sure.
I love stories. I love hearing people after a show, they come up at the autograph session and they say, well, when you recorded this song, I met my wife, or we just broke up, or this happened in my life. And, you know, so your music has, become part of their lives, and it's fun to hear that stuff.
I'm sure it's the story of many people's lives, as it was with my life too, as when the band came out. So this passion that you have is still maintained. How do you motivate yourself? How do you keep that energy level at that high level all the time?
Money. They pay me. No. Well, you know, you pace yourself. I was just kidding there, folks. I didn't mean, you pace yourself, and, you know, we're the Buckinghams now. We might play, a busy year would be playing 50 dates, you know, and it's more like 35, 40 now. Yeah. So there's spaces in between, so you can recharge your batteries. I have a very balanced life. I'm very fortunate. I have a very balanced life. I owe a lot of it to my wife. You know, I've been married almost 47 years.
Beautiful.
So we have this life outside of music. And as much as I love music, and I love it when I'm out there, but when I'm home, yeah, sometimes I have recording projects going on, or things going on, or doing interviews. But there's a lot of downtime where we'll go out and have dinner, go to a movie, go on a vacation, have the space there to do that, visit with friends. You know, that stuff keeps you, balanced, kind of. You know, absolutely. You have to do that. And then when I've had enough of that, all of a sudden you want to get back out there and play, you know, and so it sort of balances out. It's
very, very exciting. You know, these students that watch this and they look at this as a resource with many of these interviews that I've been doing, it's amazing the information that we give to them that hopefully opens up a path for them to continue and to drive their own lives in the music industry.
Yeah.
In closing, what would you say to this next generation? What advice would you give them that could allow them to follow that path of their dream?
Well, first of all, they're very fortunate that they have a lot more tools now with social media. They can find out a lot more on the internet about music and different things, you know. You have to be so motivated and focused, and the talent's got to be there. I mean, come on, otherwise you're spinning your wheels if that's not there. Yeah. The most talented people don't always make it, you know. I've watched people in my life that I've known who are extremely talented not make it for various reasons, because they don't stay on track, on focus, drugs, alcohol, you know, things that interrupt that whole process. And then other people I know that they're good, pretty talented, have had major success because they love what they do. You gotta love, you know, and you gotta stay focused. You gotta be willing to sacrifice a lot of things, because I certainly did in my life, and you know, it makes it hard sometimes to carry on a relationship with somebody when you're a musician or an entertainer because of that. You know, my advice is find somehow that you have the talent to do this, and then just work at it. It's hard. Stay focused, meet people, be nice to people. Don't be taken advantage of, but be nice, you know. I touched on a little bit how we were taken advantage of regarding like publishing and writing, and I've had a lot better time with the Buckinghams when there was that resurgence in the 80s of 60s music, and we came back, and it's been more successful. I've had control. And that's another thing. You don't have to be a music lawyer, but have control over your career. You know, find out, know what it's about, you know. know what's right and wrong. Don't let yourself be taken advantage of. You know, I recently spoke to a young artist who came to me, and she was so excited because a record company offered her a contract in Chicago, a label. She's a singer-songwriter, and she thought, wow, somebody wants me. You know, this is a great thing. And it's easy to get sucked into that because you want to be wanted. And I said, listen, don't jump, you know, just, you got to have a lawyer look at this. And she insisted I looked at the contract. I said, I'm not a lawyer, but immediately I saw some red flags on that contract. And the lawyer that I sent her to, a good friend of mine, told her don't sign it, and she didn't, you know. But that's what I'm getting at. You have to really get involved. I know a young artist, musician, writer, they want to, yeah, you should be deeply into the music, but you can't ignore that business side of it.
Right.
You gotta make yourself. It's the unfun part, but you gotta do it. You won't regret. You'll be happy years down the line. I'm telling you.
Boy, well, that, you said it all. I mean, that really is the, you know, do your homework and be aware of being in charge of your career,
Yeah.
so you don't have those regrets later on of mistakes that you made, and seeking out a lawyer or seeking out people that can give you some advice. That's very, very powerful for them to hear. And you are a great example of continuing to do what you love doing.
Yeah.
I think, Carl, that's the magic of what you're doing. You're still doing it. You're still excellent at it. I just saw you perform. The students that were here, the audience went crazy. So that's still the energy of being able to inspire people to really enjoy music and love what you're loving.
Yeah. Well, I kept thinking of what you said up there toward the end about how do you stay young, you know, and you know, you got to keep learning, and you got to keep going, and you got to keep doing it, and that's so true.
You have done that and continue to do that. Carl, thank you so much. You've done fantastic.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.